The wind swept across the barren land, carrying dust that clung to the wooden fences and whispered against the dry grass. Somewhere far off, a lonely ranch stretched under the wide, unforgiving sky. The man who owned it had lived alone for years, tending to his cattle, fixing broken gates, and watching sunsets that always seemed to set on the same silence. His name was Daniel Carter, though few people bothered to remember it. He had become a man of few words, not because he had nothing to say, but because no one seemed to listen anymore. His family had long passed away, and the few friends he once had either moved to the city or left the world behind. Life had reduced itself to a rhythm of survival: feed the cattle, mend the fences, ride the land, eat alone, sleep alone. Yet, even in the solitude, Daniel carried a heart that refused to harden. He still believed, somewhere deep inside, that kindness mattered, though he rarely had a chance to show it. One evening, after bringing in his horses before a storm rolled in, Daniel rode into town for supplies. The general store was closing, but he managed to pick up flour, canned beans, and a few essentials. As he stepped back outside, he heard shouting from down the street. At first, he thought it was just another drunken quarrel, the kind that often broke out in small towns when men let whiskey speak louder than their dignity. But then he heard a cry. A woman's voice, sharp with pain, muffled almost immediately as though someone had silenced it by force. Daniel froze for a moment, his instinct warring with caution. But then his boots carried him forward, his jaw clenched as he followed the sound into a dimly lit alley. There, against the wall, he saw her, a woman crumpled on the ground, her hair loose and tangled, her cheek already swollen from a slap too harsh to be mistaken for anything else. A man loomed over her, his hand raised as if to strike again. His words were venom, spilling out about how she was worthless, how she had failed him by giving him nothing but daughters. Daniel's chest tightened, anger rising not with heat but with a cold clarity. He didn't shout, didn't waste words. He simply stepped forward, his presence alone drawing the abuser's attention. The man turned, sneering, but when he met Daniel's eyes, something in the rancher's stillness made him pause. Daniel wasn't a fighter by trade, but years of working under the sun, of holding his ground against storms and wild animals, had carved a strength into him that didn't need to be spoken. The abuser muttered something under his breath and spat to the side, then stormed off, leaving the woman trembling against the wall. Daniel crouched down, his voice soft, almost unsure after years of disuse. "You're safe now," he said. The woman didn't look up, her shoulders shaking. He noticed the thinness of her wrists, the bruises that didn't seem fresh but layered, like storms that had come one after another. Slowly he offered his hand. She hesitated, as though the world had taught her that every outstretched hand came with a hidden cost. But Daniel didn't move it closer, didn't force her. He simply waited, letting silence say what words could not, that he meant no harm. Finally she placed her hand in his, and he helped her to her feet. Her name, he learned later, was Maria. She spoke little at first, her voice carrying the weight of years spent being silenced. She had 3 young daughters, left behind in a small shack at the edge of town, and the man she lived with, their father, saw them as burdens, not blessings. Maria had endured his cruelty because she had nowhere else to go, no money of her own, and no family to turn to. But Daniel, listening quietly, felt something stir inside him that had long been dormant. He couldn't let her return to that, not after what he had seen. "Come with me," he said finally, his voice steady. "You and your girls, you're coming with me." At first, she looked at him as though he had spoken a foreign language. Trust was not something she knew how to give freely anymore. But Daniel's eyes didn't waver, and for the first time in years, someone was offering her not pity, not judgment, but refuge. Slowly, tears filled her eyes, and though she didn't answer right away, Daniel knew she was considering the possibility of escape. That night, Daniel accompanied her to the shack where her daughters waited. The 3 girls, small and wide-eyed, clung to their mother when she entered. They looked at Daniel with fear, unsure of whether he was another man who would raise his hand against them. But Daniel simply crouched down, meeting them at eye level. "I've got a place out by the ranch," he said softly. "It's quiet. There's room to breathe. You'll be safe there." The girls exchanged glances, then turned back to their mother, who nodded slowly. With nothing but a few worn blankets and a small bag of belongings, Maria and her daughters left that night, stepping into the unknown with the rancher who had chosen kindness over silence. The ranch, once silent, became alive with new sounds. The laughter of children, tentative at first, then blooming into joy as they discovered fields to run through and animals to pet. Maria began to breathe again, her shoulders no longer constantly tensed for the next blow. Daniel, unused to company, found himself smiling more often, speaking words he thought he had forgotten. He built extra bunks in the house, taught the girls how to ride ponies, and showed them where the wild flowers grew. Slowly, he became not just a stranger who had saved them, but the foundation of a new kind of family. Yet healing was not instant. Maria carried scars that were not visible, fears that surfaced in the quiet hours. Sometimes, she would wake in the night, trembling at a sound that reminded her of old pain. Daniel never pressed her to talk, but he was there, always there, with a steady hand, a patient presence, and over time, she began to trust that his kindness was not temporary, not conditional. It was who he was. The girls flourished, their laughter weaving into the fabric of the ranch until it no longer felt empty. They began to draw pictures, sing songs, and dream of futures beyond survival. Daniel watched them grow, and though he had never had children of his own, he realized that love was not bound by blood but by choice. Still, shadows lingered. The man Maria had escaped from was not gone, not entirely. Rumors whispered through town, carrying threats and resentment. But Daniel knew one truth with unshakable certainty. He would never let them go back to that life. Whatever storms came, he would stand, not just for himself, but for them. And so, a new chapter of life began, not without challenges, but with a foundation built on something stronger than fear, kindness chosen again and again, even in the face of darkness.